This is Right to Life Radio, a production of Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
Some big news on the legal front as it relates to the abortion pill. We have been covering this for a while. It appears that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is basically keeping in place a ruling from a federal judge in North Texas to basically strike down all of the Obama-era and Biden-era regulations around the abortion pill. This will severely limit the accessibility of the abortion pill and hopefully save lives. With me to discuss this, a full episode this week with our good buddy from the California Family Council, Mr. Jonathan Keller. What's up, Jonathan?
Yo, yo, yo. John, it's always good to be here, especially when we actually have a rare bit of good news to talk about.
Yeah, well, we have bad news from Ohio, but which we'll maybe we'll talk about that later in the show. But this is some good news.
I maybe even have a slight silver lining for that.
Okay,
but I'll tell you on that.
All right, well, we'll wait on that. Ohio is dealing with the looming possibility of a state constitutional amendment, basically to strike down all of the really good pro-life laws that they've passed in Ohio, and to basically put a right to abortion, totally unbound right to abortion, right in their state constitution. We're going to talk about that later in the show. But let's talk about this Wednesday decision by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals this decision by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, basically to throw out all of the Obama-era regulations on the abortion pill, which really loosened the safety restrictions on the abortion pill, as well as throw out all of the Biden-era loosenings of restrictions on the abortion pill, and basically bring the abortion pill back to the kinds of regulations and safety procedures that were on it at the time it was approved in the year 2000. So let's go through all of this. For those who follow the show, you might say, well, didn't we go through all this earlier? So basically the question was earlier, you had this judge in the Northern District of Texas, Matthew Kaczmarek, I believe is his name?
Kaczmarek.
Okay.
The most evil man in America, if you believe the leftist press releases.
Yes. Some heavily Polish name that I have a hard time pronouncing. I can say that. My wife's Polish and also has a difficult to pronounce maiden name. All right. So, not that the Polish American anti-Polish racism lobby is going to necessarily go after the show. But anyway, I just thought I'd. So, this judge in the Northern District of Texas was presented with this question about the abortion pill. Was the abortion pill appropriately approved by the FDA? And again, every time I talk about the abortion pill on this show, I have to make the clarification. We're not talking about the morning after pill, which in a large measure, the morning after pill is genuinely a contraceptive. It's preventing ovulation. What we're talking about is the abortion pill, the process of terminating a pregnancy up to 10 weeks into the pregnancy by first taking a drug that cuts off the baby's food supply, and then, which is the abortion pill proper called mifepristone or Mifeprex, and then a second pill called misoprostol, which induces labor and results in expelling the baby. Okay, so the FDA approved mifepristone in 2000. The judge in the Northern District of Texas was tasked with this question of, was the FDA's approval of this legitimate? And he ruled no, it was not. The 2021 Biden regulations on the abortion pill, allowing it to be shipped through the mail, the 2016 Obama regulations that loosened a whole bunch of health and safety restrictions, a bunch of other restrictions, and the original 2000 approval of the abortion pill were all illegitimate. That the original approval of the abortion pill in the year 2000 was illegitimate. Why? Because the abortion pill, when it was approved in 2000, was done on an expedited basis. They needed to get it done quickly, because Al Gore might have lost the 2000 election, so God forbid.
Yep.
Because this is all about science, right? They approved it on an expedited basis, and the expedited basis approval process that the FDA has is only for drugs that treat serious diseases. And the abortion pill doesn't treat a disease. It treats, scare quotes, it artificially terminates pregnancy. So that judge issued that decision, and the question was, will that judge's decision go into immediate effect during the appeals process, or will it not? And the Fifth Circuit said, yes, parts of it can go into effect during the appeals process. The Supreme Court said, no, it cannot go into effect until the full appeals process happens. So we are now in that appeals process, okay? So his decision has gone up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, so all the federal circuits are sort of based by region. So the First Circuit Court of Appeals, they hear all the appeals and all the federal court cases in most of the states of New England. So Massachusetts, Maine, New England and Puerto Rico, actually, in the First Circuit.
Really?
Well, I was a First Circuit lawyer back when I was in Massachusetts.
To quote from our brother, Where Art Thou? Well, ain't that a geographical oddity?
It was indeed a geographical oddity. Those cases out of Puerto Rico were pretty wild. Anyway. So the First Circuit covers Puerto Rico, Massachusetts, a bunch of states in New England. Second Circuit has New York. The Fifth Circuit, I believe, is Texas, Louisiana, and Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. That's the Fifth Circuit. So the Fifth Circuit is very, very conservative. Most of the judges in the Fifth Circuit are Trump or Bush appointees. Either Bush 1 or Bush 2. And the Fifth Circuit today, they didn't completely uphold the decision by Judge Kaczmarek. What is it again, Jonathan?
I think it's Kaczmarek.
Kaczmarek?
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, so the Fifth Circuit didn't entirely uphold the decision by Judge Kaczmarek. They basically said, okay, the original approval of the abortion pill, which happened in 2000, we can't overturn that because the statute of limitations has passed. So basically, to challenge an FDA approval like that, you got to do so within a certain time frame, and we missed that window. Now, it's kind of a disputed question because the FDA did a lot to sort of prevent anyone from making a legal challenge. So it's kind of a difficult question, but basically said we can't completely reverse the initial approval of the abortion pill. However, they did agree that President Obama's 2016 regulations around the abortion pill and President Biden's 2021-2022 regulations around the abortion pill, that those should be struck down. So let's talk about those. And I think this is a huge decision because I think the popularity of the abortion pill, it really skyrocketed with the 2016 regulations. Because basically what happened, you had the initial regulations, after the abortion pill was approved in 2000, the initial regulations had a lot of safeguards around it. And it was basically like, all right, if you're going to use this abortion pill, you got to get it in a clinic. It's got to be prescribed by a doctor. It's got to be prescribed after 3 in-person doctor visits. And you can only do it in the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. And we're going to track all the health complications and have all this rigorous health reporting. Obama comes in 2016. And again, note that this keeps happening in the last full year of presidential administration.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, because Obama's like, well, it's a possibility
okay, John,
Donald Trump could win.
I just have to quickly say this is something that's super frustrating.
Yeah.
Setting aside the endorsement angle, I mean, again, as always, if we have IRS people that are listening.
Yeah, we're not endorsing politicians here.
Or even political parties.
Right.
This is just making
an observation. All right.
Can you tell me, John, the last time that a Republican presidential administration, whether it was President Trump or George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan, as an 11th hour administrative thing, got something put into place that
something pro-life,
that slid in,
right
at the
under
last
gun.
minute, and that the Democrats did not. They got into office and said, "Oh shucks, I guess our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do."
Yeah,
and guess we just got to let that stand.
Right,
Too bad.
exactly, and you're 100% right. And that's, I think, a very large, very fair criticism of both the George W. Bush presidency and the Donald Trump presidency, which is, why didn't they do anything to roll back what the FDA did, either in 2000 or in 2016. There was a last I checked, when you're elected president, you get to pick who's in charge of the HHS, and the HHS is in charge of the FDA. I believe the head of the FDA is a political appointee.
Yes.
So,
and I'll just say again, John, look, I understand. In fairness to President Trump, he did his darndest to try and repeal Obamacare, to defund Planned Parenthood. I mean,
he tried. I don't know about his darndest.
Well, and I'll say.
Anyway,
Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, the President Trump, the leadership that was in place in 2021.
Right.
If it was not for stinking John McCain and his thumbs down, one of the worst betrayals, backstabs in American politics in the last many years. If it wasn't for that, they would have actually made good, shockingly, they would have actually made good on one of the big, most important social conservative campaign promises and social conservative efforts, which was defunding Planned Parenthood.
Sure.
And that would have been huge.
Yeah.
So I want to give him credit for at least trying on that. But with that being said, that was a big deal, and it's a little less surprising that it failed because it was something that required the assent of Congress.
Right.
It was a legislative issue.
Yeah.
But
you're exactly right. That's harder to do.
It is. So if that would have happened, that would have been a huge win. But the fact that it seems like
this is entirely in the president's control.
Yes.
It's entirely in the control of his administration. You don't need Congress to vote on it.
It just feels like, John, it feels like every single time there is a close call. I mean, of course, we saw it during the Trump administration with the Census Bureau or with the travel ban or I know those are outside the scope of everything here, but it just feels like when it comes to pro-life conservative policy, somehow it just feels like, oh, so close. But, as they say, missed it by that much, as the famous Get Smart character would say.
Right. Well, and that you're 100% right. Why is it that wasn't a day one priority for the Bush administration to roll back the 2000 approval of the FDA, the 2000 approval by the FDA of the abortion pill? Why wasn't that a day one Trump administration decision to roll back at least the 2016 approval, the 2016 regulations by Barack Obama? It's a very good question. And frankly, there were other kind of regulatory things with the Trump administration. So, I mean, the rules for federal funding of abortifacient, for federal funding for embryo destructive stem cell research, those were put in place by Barack Obama. Trump never changed them, and they're still in place to this day. So makes you like why did that not happen? And I guess that's a frustrating thing. I mean, I guess you hope. Obviously, I don't think Donald Trump himself minutely micromanages everything, but that's a thing that's pretty important. It seems like a thing that should have been happened anyway. By striking down the 2016 and 2021, 2022 regulations from Barack Obama and Joe Biden, we are going to be seeing, I think, a real limiting of the effectiveness and availability of the abortion pill. And when we return, we're going to dig into that, what those regulations were, what they did, how they made the abortion pill so much more accessible. That is next on Right to Life Radio, a production, as always, of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Right to Life Radio, we are discussing the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals striking down President Biden and President Obama's regulations, loosening up restrictions on the abortion pill, and we're going to break down what that means. Hey, if you like us at Right to Life Central California, you want to help us out, get in touch with us. We need help at the Fresno and Madera fairs. We need volunteers willing to sign up and help us. If you're interested, get in touch with us at Right to Life. You can go to righttolifeca.org, or you can just give us a call at 559-229-2229. That's 229-BABY. All right. Jonathan, so the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, they've struck down a bunch of regulations, sort of loosening of regulations on the on the abortion pill that took place under President Biden and President Obama. And I think this is going to have a major impact on abortion accessibility. So let's talk about sort of all the stuff that these regulations did, to do it, I want to just sort of highlight to people how dangerous and how prevalent the abortion pill has become. So basically, we're now at the point where 53, according to more conservative estimates, 53% of all abortions are done through the abortion pill. And again, by the abortion pill, I'm not talking about the morning after pill. I'm not talking about any kind of contraceptive. I'm talking about pills taken to basically create an artificial miscarriage up to 10 weeks into a pregnancy. All right? That's what I mean. 53% of American abortions happen this way. And it's not the safest thing to do, okay? There are thousands of women who have experienced hemorrhaging, thousands of women who've had they're women who've experienced infections, hemorrhaging, thousands of women who've been hospitalized. I don't know about thousands for hemorrhaging, but I know. Well, anyway, so serious bleeding.
Yes.
Hospitalization.
Not great side effects.
Infection. There's all kinds of very serious health side effects to taking the abortion pill. What happened in 2021 with the Biden administration was you don't need to go into a clinic to get the abortion pill. You don't need to see a doctor. So that results in two things. One, it means that you don't necessarily get an ultrasound before, and you don't necessarily get an ultrasound after. If you don't get an ultrasound before, you're going to miss if you're having an ectopic pregnancy. And there was just a piece in the New England Journal of Medicine in January about a woman who was experiencing an ectopic pregnancy, only knew she was pregnant, didn't know it was an ectopic pregnancy, took the abortion pill at home, and then almost died because guess what? It doesn't work because the baby's not growing in the uterus. So she almost died because the baby was growing ectopically.
Yep.
If you don't have an ultrasound after the fact, you can miss what's called an incomplete abortion. An incomplete abortion is basically not everything has been expelled from your uterus, whether it's the placenta or the parts of the baby. If not everything's expelled, then there's serious risk of infection. And again, that's another thing you're missing if you're not having an in-clinic requirement surrounding the abortion pill. So the Biden administration gets rid of that. The Obama administration earlier, though, in 2016, they had also loosened things up. When the abortion pill was first approved in 2000, you needed 3 in-person examinations with a doctor before you could get a prescription for the abortion pill. 3. You could only, the FDA guidelines for the abortion pill were only for the first 7 weeks of pregnancy, not the first 10. So the Obama administration rules, 1, it got rid of the 3 doctor visit, just said 1. 2, it expanded the window from 7 weeks to 10 weeks. It also, critically, stopped requiring incident reporting for anything other than death, which is just astonishing. Like, they have all this health and safety. Oh, we think the abortion pill is relatively safe with these more stringent safeguards. So therefore, that's the basis for us to have less stringent safeguards. How can you have any basis for knowing that's safe? It's safe, relatively safe, only when you have all these stringent safeguards around it. So you're going to take all of those away? That's the basis for approving less strict guidelines? It doesn't make any sense. And that's, I think, ultimately what the court held, was that fundamentally the 2016 regulations made no sense. They were approving a process of providing the abortion pill that they had no health and safety data for. They had no way of knowing. And basically, they said, well, we're just going to stop collecting any data regarding adverse events. I mean, it's insane. And you can see the popularity of pill abortions. It really skyrocketed in 2016 when you have, after the 2016 regulations, you expand the window from 7 weeks of pregnancy into 10 weeks. You don't need 3 doctor's appointments to do it. That was really where the abortion pill became widely available. So I'm I think we'll wait and see what happens with this Fifth Circuit decision. But I feel hopeful. I don't know about you.
Everything that I've read up to this point, I mean, it was kind of a little shocking, obviously, like we said, with Judge Kaczmarek.
His initial decision
was very strong.
Right. And it could be that the Supreme Court could. Now, ultimately, the Supreme Court has to decide if they're going to take an appeal of this Fifth Circuit decision or not. I think they could go further. I think they could look at this from the position of the Comstock Act, which is a very old federal law. So basically, it was passed by Ulysses S. Grant, and while it prohibits a bunch of interstate commerce transporting various kinds of immoral materials through the mail, but one thing it does mention very specifically is stuff to induce abortion. And I'm wondering if that could be applied to put more restrictions on the abortion pill. I guess it depends on if the Supreme Court is willing to go back that far to a fairly obscure law that was passed under Ulysses S. Grant but was never overturned.
Well, and so this is the big question. I'm how do I put this delicately? There's a group of friends that we communicate with.
Yes.
That
are wondering this very point.
Yes, they chatted about this specifically, and they said, okay, so one person, again using Chatham House rules, asked the question: does the majority's decision in this not to address the Comstock Act prevent the Supreme Court from taking up that question?
No, they can look at that.
The answer was technically it does not. Everything is on the table for SCOTUS.
Yeah. So we will see. I mean, could the Supreme... Now,
I think if we had 6 or 7 Clarence Thomases, they would probably pick it up.
Yeah,
but
unfortunately, we only have one Clarence Thomas. I think it's most likely that the Supreme Court will decide either not to take the case or to take the case and just kind of uphold what the Fifth Circuit's doing right now, which is not to completely overturn the original FDA approval of abortion, but to put in place these more restrictive regs. So I hope at least that happens. I still would be delighted and think would be fair and fitting for a complete wiping out of the legality of the abortion pill. But we will see. All right. Now, when we return, we're going to talk about Ohio, the vote that happened in Ohio this past week regarding their state constitution, the threat of abortion being inserted into their state constitution, and why I think there needs to be a federal abortion solution. That's next on Right to Life Radio. Last week, Ohio had a vote on amending their state constitution. Basically, they had a vote to say, hey, constitutional amendments should get 60% vote, should require that when the people of Ohio vote on it, it needs to get 60% of the votes in order to amend the state constitution, not just a simple majority. Well, that measure failed. And a lot of it was being backed by pro-lifers who are really concerned about another vote coming up in November. So in November, Ohio is poised to vote as a state on a proposed amendment to their constitution to put a right to legal abortion right there into the Ohio state constitution. Not the constitution of the Ohio State University of the state of Ohio.
Ohio State.
Yeah, gosh, the thing is my wife's biggest pet peeve. She just cannot stand Ohio State for that. Now, Jonathan, let's talk about what this means.
Yes.
Okay, so Ohio has been a very surprisingly conservative state over the last several years. It has sort of almost ceased to be a battleground state, really. In 2000, 2004, everyone was like, yeah, Ohio and Florida are like the two big battleground states. And nowadays, Florida and Ohio are very solidly red states.
Right.
And in this time frame that Ohio has become more politically conservative, they have done a lot to advance pro-life legislation. Before Roe, they passed a heartbeat bill to basically ban abortion after fetal heartbeat can be detected. And they've passed a lot of other good pro-life legislation.
Right.
Both before, and I think they've done some stuff since Roe v. Wade was overturned.
And to clarify, John, I just need to point out something on this, because I think this is the case for Ohio, if I'm remembering. just in case people are listening, I don't know, occasionally on the radio, you hear people that maybe are scrolling through the dial and they're like, those anti-choice extremists, all they do are try to restrict women's rights. Well, I can tell you that in conservative, pro-life states, contrary to our enlightened progressive state of California, one thing that they also do, yes, in addition to trying to restrict and limit the killing of precious unborn human persons, they also actually try to fund pregnancy help organizations.
Right.
Like Obria.
Yeah.
They actually, I mean, imagine, John, a place where instead of just saying, we're going to give essentially a blank check to Planned Parenthood and their cronies.
Yeah, maybe they'll give a blank check to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
We're actually going to...
like the Obria opened a clinic in Texas, and I think they got a massive grant from the state, like right at their opening to help them out. So there are ways that you can you're not just restricting abortion, but you can also help further the causes of prenatal care for lower income people, et cetera. So right. I should point out, so it's good of you to mention that, Jonathan, that we're not just talking about states limiting abortion.
Yes. And a lot of that has come even before Roe v. Wade was overturned, but especially in the aftermath. A lot of states are saying, let's now put our money where our mouth is. If we say we're going to be pro-life from womb to tomb, as we are, then and I even would hope that some of our Democrat friends across the aisle would be willing to reach across and do some of this.
Well, one would hope. So, in lieu of hopes, let's talk about votes. So, Ohio was not able to change the process for constitutional amendments, and they're going to have a vote in November on Election Day, this November, November 2023, on basically amending the Ohio Constitution to put a legal right to abortion right there in the Ohio State Constitution, meaning that a normal law passed by the Ohio legislature would not be able to overturn this. And it's an unbound right to abortion. There's no limitations listed on it. And from what I'm hearing, this does not sound great. This is not sounding good. That it sounds like the pro-lifers are feeling pretty discouraged, and that there's a very good chance that this constitutional amendment will, in fact, pass, and that Ohio will go from being a pro-life state to a pro-choice state. And I think what we're seeing is Democrats have realized most people are just kind of vaguely pro-choice.
Yes.
And if you put a constitutional ballot initiative in front of them saying, this is protecting our right to choose, voters won't look at the details. And you can put a completely unbound right to abortion in it, and a majority of Americans in almost every state are going to vote for it.
Which, John,
and that's a real problem.
Yes, I hate to say it, but part of the reason why I supported the original thing of issue 1, is that kind of like our founders thought. Our founders realized maybe direct democracy is not actually that great of an idea.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. People's attitudes about abortion have not made sense in this country for forever. Everyone supported Roe v. Wade. If you put the words Roe v. Wade in front of them, most people, I support Roe v. Wade. And then if you actually ask them, hey, do you think abortion should happen after 20 weeks of pregnancy? They'll be like, oh, no, that's monstrous. What are you talking about? Do you think abortion should happen after the first trimester? No, of course I don't. It's like, okay, well, you can't support Roe v. Wade and support limits on abortion after the first trimester. Roe v. Wade prevented anyone from doing that. And that's the thing is, Americans simultaneously have a lot of, frankly, there are a lot of political views that you can assign to a majority of Americans that are contrary to each other. Views like, the deficit spending is bad, and don't you ever touch my Social Security or my Medicare. Like the idea that there's no conflict there. Anyway, well, whatever. Maybe I'm wandering into other political territory. Nonetheless, Americans' views on abortion have never made much sense. And if you just put in front of people something that sounds generic enough, I generically think that there should be a right to abortion. I don't want to seem like I'm, an extremist. People will vote for it. And that's the problem, is I think Democrats have realized this is a winning strategy.
Yes.
Let's get state constitutional amendments, ballot initiatives to legalize abortion in very broad terms where no one's thinking about the details, and all you'll have are pro-lifers yelling and screaming, wait, you're going to approve third trimester abortions. What are you doing? You can't vote for this. I feel like they're going to try to do this in Ohio. I feel like they're going to try to do this in every single remotely purple state in the union and maybe a lot of red states. And this leads me to two observations. One, well, and I think the answer to this is because pro-lifers don't really have a nationwide bazillionaire who really wants to donate political money to put his money where his mouth is and get this achieved. But how come pro-lifers aren't in every state of the union, including this one, trying to introduce ballot initiatives to ban abortion from 20 weeks on, from 15 weeks on, from 12 weeks on? Even if you're in a purple state, even if you're in a blue state, those kinds of restrictions have majority support. Okay, a majority of Californians don't support third trimester abortions. Why don't we try a ballot initiative to that effect? You know, where are conservatives? Where are Republicans? Where are pro-lifers when it comes to strategy here?
And John, I will say on that note, I understand talking with some of our friends and allies in other states with national organizations. There is this tension where some people say, well, look, if we accept half a loaf now that we have finally got Roe v. Wade overturned, if we preemptively surrender and accept a 24-week ban or a 20-week ban or a 15-week ban, whatever it is, if we preemptively kind of compromise and say, all right, we're gonna accept this now because we know it can pass, I think the fear is from some groups that will basically freeze in amber the debate, and people will say, especially Republicans, lest people think that we are all rah conservative GOP cheerleaders
this
here.
This is not a pro-Republican segment. Don't anyone interpret it that way. What this is revealing, what this Ohio thing is revealing to me, and frankly, the very disappointing performance of various ballot initiatives that have had to do with abortion in the last year since Roe was overturned, is one, there are a lot of pro-choice Republicans out there, more maybe than I realized, and that's super depressing. But two, I think Republicans, when it comes to the abortion issue, are very scared and are very squeamish and don't have much stomach. And you see guys like Mitch McConnell say, oh, I think it's just a state issue. I think it's just a state issue. And this gets me to my last point, just to land this airplane. There was a bit of a very theoretical argument that was going on with the Dobbs case, where there were some pro-lifers who were trying to argue we should push for legal arguments to say that the 14th Amendment provides an affirmative right to life for unborn children. And others who are saying, no, the 14th Amendment from an originalist perspective does not define unborn children as persons who have a right to life. And abortion is therefore just a question for the states. It's just a question for Congress to decide. It's not in the Constitution. And you had, I think, very good people on both sides of that argument. People who are pro-life and who just, some of them are pro-life and they just thought the Constitution doesn't protect a right to life. They just thought the Constitution does not outlaw abortion. So you had guys like Ed Whelan from the Ethics and Public Policy Center who were arguing, no, the 14th Amendment does not protect this. You had guys like Robert George, though, from Princeton University, who said, yes, I think it does. I think the 14th Amendment, an originalist reading of the 14th Amendment, I think does protect the right to life and would outlaw abortion. And the Supreme Court, in its decision in Dobbs, the majority decision doesn't even really get into the discussion. And basically, Justice Alito just says, there's no right to abortion in the Constitution. He doesn't say if there's an affirmative right to life for unborn children or affirmative that abortion is outlawed by the Constitution. He just says there's not a right to abortion. Now, Justice Kavanaugh, in his concurrence, very explicitly ruled out the idea of the 14th Amendment affirmatively protecting the right to life of unborn children. That unborn children don't fit into the definition of person as it's used in the 14th Amendment. In all of this, though, I think we're really starting to see the weakness of this patchwork. One state has pro-life laws, the other state doesn't. This state doesn't. This state does. This state doesn't. This state's going to change from protecting unborn children to not protecting unborn children. This state, it's going to be an argument with their state constitution about whether or not it does. Frankly, I think a federal solution needs to happen. You know, this is one thing John Paul II wrote was, obviously he's kind of writing to Catholics, but I think non-Catholics can see there's a lot of wisdom to this. In his opinion, he said basically the right to, there are certain things that should not be up for democratic votes. Whether or not someone has fundamental human dignity should not be the subject of a majority decision. Like just because 51% decide, 51% of or 51% of this room deciding that producer Colton should be run over by a truck. That is not fair. That is not a vote that should be allowed to take place. I
would vote against that, just for the record.
Yeah, well, yeah. So he's got the votes. Even if Colton didn't have the votes, he still shouldn't be run over by a bread truck. And that's like. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. I think John Paul II is completely right when he said that in the Gospel of Life, his Evangelium Vitae, is 1995 encyclical. We should not leave this stuff up to democratic votes. It should not be up to the whims of the electorate whether a whole segment of the populace gets to live or die. All right, let's get back. We'll be back with our final segment right after this. This is Right to Life Radio on Power Talk. Back with Right to Life Radio. Ohio is deciding in a democratic vote this upcoming November. They're going to have a vote on whether or not to put into the Ohio State Constitution a constitutional amendment allowing legal abortion, to sweep away all of the pro-life laws that they've passed in Ohio. Ohio has actually been really outstanding. Their legislature and their governor, Mike DeWine, is he?
Yep, you got it.
There we go. Passed some really good law bills to limit abortion. This could all be swept away with this vote that's coming this November. And it led to us talking about, we really think there needs to be some, whether or not unborn children should live or not, should not be up to majority votes in democracy. So Jonathan had a quote to that effect.
So this is a semi-famous quote from Benjamin Franklin, who was not a
Catholic,
not
John Paul II, not a particularly moral person.
No,
anyway,
but he was there present at the Constitutional Convention.
All right, let's hear it.
And he says, "Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch." Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote.
That's a pretty good Ben Franklin quote. Yeah, and that's a lot of states adopted these direct democracy measures. California wholeheartedly embraced it, in the early 20th century, and I guess, and that's I think we're so conditioned as Americans to think that a majority vote is the way to solve all these problems. And I don't know that it is. And that's why I really wish Republicans would not be so scared of federal legislation to limit abortion, or heck, maybe even someday, again, trying to pursue a federal constitutional amendment. That'll do it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And just to clarify, John, I think
we got to wrap this up.
Many other states, Florida, for example, they have a higher threshold to amend their constitution. That's all Ohio was trying to do, and that's what you have to do to amend the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
So
that'll do it for Right to Life Radio. We'll see you next time on Power Talk.